The B78 Coaching Podcast takes a quick dive into the lives of athletes at all levels. Short and sweet, the goal is to help you troubleshoot some of the common issues and questions around training in a time-efficient manner. Welcome to the B78 Podcast. Today on the show, we have Chris Brumwell from the beautiful city of Vancouver. Chris is an awesome guy, father of three. I think I said father of two when I was doing my research, and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot one of them. And he's a PR and sports enthusiast, an Ironman 70.3 finisher. And PR to me means personal record, but I think in your world it actually means something different.
Yeah, public relations.
Relations, exactly. I did know that, but I in my brain it's like, oh, personal record enthusiast. I'm one of those too.
Yeah,
I always like getting personal records. So anyway, Chris, tell me a little bit about what's driving you these days. What's the goal? If the races were going, what would be the goal?
The big goal this year, assuming everything is able to, I guess, go through, would be the Ironman Canada race in Penticton. That would be the big one.
Yeah.
That would be my first full distance Ironman. And so I've been working towards that, but obviously we're all kind of dealing with a different world right now. So we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm eternally the optimist for that race happening at the end of August. My fingers are crossed, but we seem to have rolling cancellations here, so who knows? But
yeah,
hopefully it'll go. And what are I mean, you know, like everybody, I know you're dealing with the ups and downs of training and life. And so what's the tricky thing right now that you're dealing with?
I think probably overall, just the uncertainty of life right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm probably like a lot of people where you kind of have ups and downs of motivation during the day or during the week. And then obviously like nobody can really swim right now either. And that's an area that it's probably the weakest of the three,
Mm-hmm.
which is also probably like many age groupers out there. So that's something that I fortunate to be able to work with Kylie and your group on those weekly calls to keep those exercises going and keep focused.
Yeah, totally. I think the uncertainty right now is really tough for people. I know, lots of people probably having the roller coaster ride of motivation.
Yeah.
Do I keep doing this thing? What's the point if there's no finish line or start line that I'm getting ready for? Thankfully, some of them are still effectively a go until they're not. So
Right.
That's helpful. But even the intermediary steps, like if you had a half Ironman that you were going to do en route or some shorter races that are likely canceled, that can be challenging. And I think, it's hard in times like that when the target you're aiming for has been taken away, because then you feel a bit aimless.
Yeah.
And, I think the biggest thing I've been trying to convey to people is that first of all, there's still like a real deep purpose to the training. And if you can bring that same intent that you have, if there is a start line you're getting ready for, if you can bring that same intent even without that start line, it's really important. It's harder because the objective's not as clear, but the training itself can still be very targeted and on track. And hopefully Kylie's sort of getting you in the right in the right mindset for that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is really, really important to consider is that, we as humans, we're typically internally or externally motivated. And these situations when our external motivators are taken away from us, so the start line, the finish line with the medal and your family cheering, those are all kind of external motivators. So you have to really check in and think like, how can I find internal motivation for this thing? Like, what are the internal drivers that are really going to help me get through this patch where things are a little bit uncertain? And I know for me, it was always, things like just trying to be better, just trying to see how good I could be for the sake of itself, like for the sake of just getting better at something without any measurable outcome to go with it, just like trying to get better at those specific sports. And the other big driver, I think, for people right now can just simply be to feel better. Like, it does give you a reason to kind of get up in the morning and start your day with some physical exertion, which is just helpful for your mindset. So I think, there's a couple things that you can tap into that aren't necessarily, finish line or finishing medal kind of driven, that are helpful for sure.
And I find that too, Jazzy, like, it gives me balance in an uncertain kind of environment right now. So, with Training Peaks, I'm one of those people that gets addicted to the green boxes.
Yeah.
And which is it can be a bit of an issue actually, but that the accountability remains, which is good. And then just that balance that we all need, right? And being able to participate every day in the exercises and training, especially if you get up early and get them done, it sets you up so much better for the day. I personally, anyway.
Oh, totally. Like I haven't been getting ready for a particular event for probably 6 or 7 years now. But I know if I start my day, even with just a 30-minute run, that doesn't even have a pace goal or a distance goal or anything, like, I just feel better.
Yeah.
I just feel better. And it sets me up to first of all, I'm way more productive, but that's one thing, productivity. But the other thing is just my whole outlook on life changes. The way I deal with the kids changes, the way I feel about myself changes. There's just so much value in kind of just physically exerting yourself a little bit at the start of the day, for sure.
100%.
So you mentioned, a couple other things. One thing that you're dealing with an injury right now, which has been challenging, I think. Hey.
Yeah, I'm dealing with a bit of a knee. I think it's tendonitis in my right knee, and kind of been dealing with it since probably August or so, off and on, and I can never seem to get over the hump.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I think the push and pull of, maybe the smart thing is some rest.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always that pull of the green box.
Yes.
And making sure that you're keeping up with your training and you don't want to fall behind. But
Mm-hmm.
the smart thing probably is a bit more rest, and so just that's kind of something I've never really had an injury before, as I've done the triathlon training, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's been a new experience trying to figure out the right path and the right advice, and when to push and when maybe to really dial it back.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much to say around, injuries and what to do about them. First and foremost, they're like super challenging. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're the best athlete in the world or a beginner. Injuries are really challenging because there's never really a set timeline. So that's tough. Like, it's not like you get an injury and then you find out you're like 3 weeks from now, it'll be 100% gone. Typically if we get a cold or we get sick or something, there's a little bit more clear timelines because we know how the immune system kicks in and deals with it, and then we kind of get rid of it. But injuries can be a little unpredictable. And you said this one's been going on for quite a while. That's a long timeline to have uncertainty every time you get on the bike or you run. So I think the way to deal with it, a couple things. The first is that as clear a diagnosis as you can get is always helpful. And I'm assuming you've probably, sought out the advice of the right people, probably like to death. Who have you seen?
Yeah, well, I've seen a few physios and doctors who have, it hasn't been blatantly obvious, I guess. It's been a kind of a funny one.
Mm-hmm.
There's no structural issues or anything like that. So their advice is to, they give you a set of, exercises or this or that to work on, which are all good. But I haven't just had, like, the running has really just been the issue. Doesn't hurt on the bike. Okay. Obviously the swim is fine. The strength training, nothing is really an issue, and it doesn't ever hurt during So if I went for a run right now, I'd probably feel fantastic.
Right.
And then I wake up tomorrow morning and it's stiff. And I'm like, oh man, I got another, what's going on here? So, the pandemic actually, and the cancellation or postponement of the Victoria race, I just, thought, okay, I just let's try dialing it way back here on the running and just keep the aerobic fitness and the strength going through bike and other things. So Kylie and I have been working on that.
Yeah. And have you found, has it improved? Like you're basically taking out the part of the training that is actually aggravating it?
Yeah, it seems to be. It
Yeah.
seems to be. And so I just want to make sure I do it long enough where when I start to ease back into running, I don't do it because I just want to make sure it's good, as best I can anyhow.
Yeah. A couple things
And I've got
jump
good
out.
advice.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
got good people around. So
Yeah. A couple things jump out at me. If you see,
go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. I think we're on a bit of a delay here with the Wi-Fi. That's cool. Yeah. Like, first of all, depending on who you see for a certain injury, like if you see a chiro or a massage or physio or whoever, they're usually going to see the injury from their perspective, like from their education. So I always find you might get multiple diagnoses for the same thing, which isn't a bad thing. You're just getting different opinions. So you kind of have to see which set of advice is going to be the most helpful. Sometimes, this advice won't really help, but this advice does help. So
Right.
sometimes you have to navigate that a little bit, which is challenging. But the other thing that I realized after 2 decades of racing was that ultimately rest was usually the thing that solved it. We get into these cycles of, over treating the thing because you'd be so anxious to get back that you'd be seeing, multiple practitioners, which is probably not the best course of action. Probably best just to stick with one and give it a whirl. But we would just be so frantically anxious to get back. We would see 100 people about the same thing and over-treat, and you're probably just aggravating it more and more. And then ultimately, I learned this the hard way every single time. It's like I never actually learned the lesson. But if I just let it rest, and sometimes it needed more rest than I wanted to give it because I just wanted to get back out there. But usually rest was the thing that solved it. And maybe during this crazy time where we're sort of forced to dial back and the races are canceled, you're actually experiencing that, which is a good thing.
Yeah, no, I think it could help. I mean, it's for, as living in BC, the weather has been absolutely spectacular. So the running would be nice, but I'm going to try some rest, some old fashioned rest, and see if this actually might do it.
Yeah. And you should. And now, we're kind of getting to the point of you got nothing to lose by resting it more.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing between, there's probably not going to be anything between now and Ironman. So you might as well give it all the time it needs.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised at how quickly your run fitness comes back. So I don't think you need to worry about that. And also know that there's a lot of crossover fitness that happens. Like your heart and lungs don't know the difference between biking, running, cross-country skiing. Muscle specificity is a different thing. Like, of course, muscularly, you're going to have to readapt and get fit. But heart and lungs are still getting a workout. And if you can lean a little bit more on your bike volume, get a little bit stronger there, you're not going to lose as much as you might think you're going to lose.
Yeah.
So give it the time. And then the other bit of advice I'd give you is to make sure that when you go back, you're hopefully taking care of the reason the problem flared up in the first place. So it might be running shoe selection. It might be the terrain you're running on. It might be, I don't know, there might be some things that you can do that, you don't want to get 3 weeks into running and now you got the same issue after I got back. There might be something that you need to fix that will actually help you get it back. And again, I don't have the answer to that because I'm not an expert in this specific injury, but it's worth investigating and maybe asking some of those experts that you've sort of asked about it. Maybe selection or something can help for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some weakness on my right side there on
Yep.
just in the glute and hamstring. So I feel like we've got a pretty good idea of exactly what's causing it, but it's just a matter of sticking with it and keeping up with the exercises and resting and just being smart.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Well, I would encourage you, just like, if you feel, once you feel like it's 100%, like 100%, like give it another week.
Right.
Don't get to 100% and be like, I'm all in again. Like, give it longer than it needs to, because there's no rush.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. Second issue, swim anxiety for age groupers.
Yeah.
That's a common one. Do you get that? You get worked up?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a long list of people who feel the same way, but when I started this, like whatever it's been, 3 years or so, I hadn't had any swimming lessons since I was probably 8 years old. Like, I wasn't blessed with a previous experience in the pool. So, I think it all probably stemmed from breathing and not really, having the technique and the breathing consistency to get it going. And then throwing yourself into black open water in a washing machine full of 1,000 other people can get it going a bit. So I think it's I feel like I'm way better than I was when my first race, when I needed the help of a volunteer on a paddle board to kind of calm me down a bit when I had a bit of a panic attack. But it's still something when you're standing there at the start line with 1,000 other people in wetsuits. It's still something mentally I work through carefully.
Yeah. And you know what? You're not alone. I mean, there'd be a very high percentage of people that feel the same way. And I think a lot of triathletes don't necessarily come from a swim background. It sounds like you maybe had a little bit of a swim background, but not too much.
Not really. No.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few little strategies that I'm sure you're incorporating already. One is your start position. So, if you know you're going to get worked up in the middle of the group, like, start on the side, even if you sacrifice 30 seconds in an Ironman or something, in the grand scheme of it, you're going to gain more by having less anxiety and losing that kind of mental energy by just picking a different start position. Another really simple one, you mentioned breathing. I think that's a really big issue for people. When we get stressed, we usually hold our breath. Like, we have all this tension and we hold, or we hyperventilate, like we don't exhale properly. So, when you get in the water, if you have a chance to warm up or not, like, just focusing on making bubbles in the water, like, go right back to earliest, stage of learning to swim. When you're a little kid, one of the first things they teach you is to blow bubbles so that you learn how to exhale underwater. And we have to remember that as adults. And with that real anxious response we get, wetsuit on, cold weather, all of a sudden we're kind of holding our breath or not clearing the CO2 from our system, which is ultimately makes you feel even more anxious.
Yeah.
And another little trick you might consider is, I don't know what kind of goggles you wear, but sometimes people feel really claustrophobic, but you can get goggles now that have like a huge amount of peripheral vision. And those can sometimes be helpful for people too, because they don't feel as boxed in. They don't feel like they're just being shoved like in a box. You can get like, and sometimes they're a little bit bigger. They look a little goofy, but if they solve the anxiety part of it, that can be pretty helpful. So,
okay.
A couple little things. Yeah.
Those are good.
Yeah. And now rolling starts. I mean, a lot of these races are rolling starts. So there is a little bit more freedom in terms of when you get in the water. You don't, and you can spread out right away. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, this has been great. I feel like we've solved all your problems.
I'm ready to go. Just need a race.
That's right. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing a couple of things that you're maybe struggling with or needed to troubleshoot. I think lots of people are going to relate to that. And I really appreciate your time. Nice to see you on the screen.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. It's awesome.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. And have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, man. See ya.